Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. Wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, as always, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you guys, whether you have started with us from the very beginning or you just started listening to us now. So glad to have you on board. And if you have been here since the beginning, then my guest right now should be one who's familiar with you. I talked to him in episode 15, which was like 2 months into this podcast. And then I talked to him last year, episode 72 as well. My guest is one who I wanted to get in touch with because I wanted to talk to him before he took his first coaching job in 2020. And then we reconnected and we talked last year. And now he's on to year 3 and with a little bit of a change of scenery involved as well. So kind of a cool little thing we have going here on this show to kind of chronicle his journey and kind of check in with him and see how things are going year to year. And so I'm excited to learn a little bit about how the past year went, see what he's got in store for next year and talk some hoops. So once again, very happy to have Coach Billy Joe Nix on. Coach, how are things going?
Oh, great. Living the dream every day.
Love it.
Just hoops, and more hoops.
Hoops, and more hoops. What more could you ask for, right? No, that's excellent. Awesome. Now, usually, as those listeners know, I do a little intro where I have the guests talk about their coaching background and everything like that. But we've got into that the previous couple episodes. So to kind of switch gears on this a little bit, I'll just have you kind of give me the rundown, and I'm sure we'll go into this in more detail. But let's talk about kind of the last year in general. How had things been the last year, and I guess what's kind of the quick and dirty version of how the last year went for you. And like I said, I'm sure we'll get into some more detail of it later.
Yeah, well, I initially got hired at Mendon Unity to coach in the 8th grade girls program there. And that was the first year. And second year, I stepped down to the 7th grade. I actually had kind of that feeling of looking how the coach was with the girls. And I said, they have a better connection. And, as a coach, you tell yourself you'll do what's right for the team. And I felt it was better that he went with them to 8th grade. And they had a very successful season. So the 8th grade girls actually finished 3rd in state in class 2A for IESA. So had a very, very tough state tournament. They only lost 1 game, ended up coming out in 3rd state. It was a really cool experience to be there for those games. So as far as my 7th grade girls, it was a little bit more of a learning curve for some of them. Of course, when I first got hired, it was the COVID year.
Yeah. So
some of them didn't do anything. They didn't play any. Of course, some of them did do travel ball, but a lot of them just really hadn't touched the ball in 2 years. So there's quite a few girls in that class of now going to be 8th graders. So, and I also had a couple of 6th graders that mixed in there that I had to kind of rely on because I needed ball handling and things just to get the ball across half court. So things in retrospect, I think as coaches, we would always do things a little bit different. Not necessarily drawing up a play different, but just looking at tactically and how I would approach certain situations. So, but definitely a learning experience for me. I tried to do what I could to help set them up for a future success by bringing in a couple of the 6th graders that I thought were really exceptional and putting them in some situations because I knew that they were going to need them going forward. I maybe didn't exactly get the warmest reception from some parents, but I never want to put a kid out there and just have them turn the ball over constantly, and not because I care about the game, because I don't want to break their confidence. So, yeah. But I did have some girls that really improved. I mean, from they couldn't hit the rim to they were hitting free throws at a pretty decent rate and stuff like that. So those are the little successes that I took pride in. It was again, it was a challenging year, like every year always has its unique challenges, but we ended up losing in the second round of the regionals to a very good team from Brown County, which they went to state. And they have a very good team there. So there's always a tough squad. And it's one of those things where you have a player on your squad that's one of our girls was for seventh grade. She was our best player. And I had to rely on her to do a lot more than what she should have been asked to do. Mm-hmm. But when she went up and played with the eighth graders, she just got to be a role player and got to be successful and just do the small things and really very impact the game great. So it was good to still see her have success. But that's pretty much kind of how the year ended with us as far as our record goes. And I decided to step away from the program at the end of the year. Kind of a little mix of personal and professional. So logistically, it was killing me driving all that way. It was an absolute outstanding opportunity for a first-time coach to coach at such a great program with great parent support, and had some pretty significant basketball history and success in the past. So I think that them going to state there I know the coach before, Coach Kuhn, had won like 4 or 5 state titles. They finished second and third several times. So it's a really great program. And Kevin Connery is over that program. He's also the JV coach, and that guy knows hoops. And I learned a lot from him. I really did learn a lot from him. I went in thinking I was going to come and revolutionize everything. And I ended up just like my first year, I think we talked about that. I got humbled a lot. And the second year, I felt more confident, and I think I felt even more confident in my skills and abilities. I learned a lot about communication, I think, is a big thing on how to communicate better and how to simplify things, because we have a tendency to think 4 or 5 steps ahead, and they're not there with you yet. So you got to slow it down. But back to, so I left logistically, it was a little bit of an issue, and I just felt like it was probably time for me to move on. I knew that there was people waiting in the wings. There was a mom that had helped out with the team before who played college ball, and she actually got hired on this position. And I texted her and I told her congrats, and their team is lucky to have her. So I'm sure that team is going to continue to be strong for a long time.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you always kind of think about that. I feel like whenever you leave a program, I just hope whoever's there after me is able to keep things going or take it even in a better, position or to greater heights than I was able to. And sometimes it works out that way. And I'm glad that you're having that situation as well. And as you start, I guess to start, as you kind of look into this upcoming year, now that you're taking over in a new spot with a previous couple years of experience, what do you think you are going to be able to do coming into this new position, having previous experience that maybe you wouldn't have known to do or weren't going to be able to do when you took over your first gig a couple years ago?
Well, I think earn confidence. Actual earn confidence. I was very confident that I know all this stuff, but I think the COVID year again was really weird, and it's like you just draw yourself plays into a frenzy and just think that you're John Wooden all of a sudden. I've got hired on as the 8th grade coach for South Fulton, which is in Astoria, Illinois. It's actually a co-op between 2 schools, South Fulton and VIT. So they don't co-op for schools, they just co-op for sports. 2 kind of small rural communities in the West Central Illinois area. 1A ball. So they're a smaller school, older facilities, which is but still great. But I'm also coaching boys, which was coaching boys and girls I've learned is a lot different. So I got a little bit of chance to find some game film on what they did before. And I actually sat down with when I sat down with the interview, they kind of told me what they were looking for. And I just thought it matched perfectly because we're on the same page. I told them, and I went in with like convictions that this is who I am and this is who I'll be. And I said, winning's the third or fourth most important thing on my list. I especially at this level, like it was great being at a program that had such success at like state tournament stuff, but I don't necessarily measure a team's success or a player's success based on championships won and lost. It's a great accomplishment for those girls. It was really awesome seeing that, but I want them to be like really well-rounded players when they get into high school, and then be able to really grow their skill set and become very competitive in varsity. Coach Casey Jones is the varsity coach there. He was an alum of the program. He's a lot younger than me, so but I don't take any, it's fine with me. It's like if you're passionate about ball and you know the game and stuff, I'm going to listen to you. But going into this, I just kind of came in and I knew that I had to be myself, and that's the confidence that I've earned. Like I've made mistakes, I've got convictions, and plus this time I've kind of been given carte blanche to do what I need to do.
Really?
I didn't really have that before, where it's kind of two coaches doing two different things. I wanted to follow along and to make things consistent, but we had different players with different skill sets and couldn't necessarily do that. But my assistant is also a fourth grade teacher there. His name is Dylan Cantu. He was with the boys last year. He's on board. So I've come up with everything tactically. We're like rebuilding rules, team culture, everything. That's kind of like I can just come in with all that stuff that I tried to do when I went to Unity that was already established, like building team culture and setting roles and standards and all those kind of things. They aren't at South Fulton right now.
Okay. And what are you trying to establish culture-wise? Is there anything specifically you got on the checklist that you're looking to implement?
Well, it seems like there wasn't, talking with the varsity coach and with the previous coach there, that there was a lot of apathy going on, just like coaches that really didn't care or didn't quite know what they were doing. So I'm gonna come in and establish hey, you've got to care about this and tell them you get what you put into this game. So, and get them excited about it. That's the big thing. When you're from a program, like I said, I don't care so much about winning. But when you're from a program that is just not good for a long period of time, and you have coaches that don't know what they're doing or don't really care too much, it's hard to get the kids excited about it. So, and then they start losing interest when they get into high school.
And how much interaction have you had with the players that you're going to be working with?
Well, there's a lot of baseball happening right now in the state of Illinois.
That's Illinois.
So I've had some open gyms, and there's been very limited participation. Really, only one 8th grader has come in. This kid he's going to be the star player. He won the 2A state title in pole vaulting. He's the tallest kid. I call him Baby Giannis. He's not quite there though. Just big and big and just goes in one direction at full speed. So I said, I can work with that. We got to get him dribbling more, but it was fun to really get down to basics and just kids that hadn't really been coached. I love that stuff. I love the fundamentals. Because you can make them fun, you can make them games. And when you see a kid who realizes, oh, I've been doing this wrong the whole time, just teach them, hey, just put your feet like this and bend here, and then they make a shot and they're like, oh my God, yeah, you could do this.
Yeah, right.
So that's kind of fun. I mean, it's a challenge when you get into competition and you have kids that aren't as skilled. Like I said, I haven't seen all the athletes, but I've seen enough game film. to know that regardless, it's going to be a challenge. But I think it's going to be fun. And I just really want them to be passionate about the game. And like I talked about with my coach, like, look, our goal is to not be their last coach. We want them to go on to high school and play. So making them enjoy the game and just like bringing like a culture of fun and make them care about it. So that's the big thing I want to kind of establish there.
And I'm curious that the sense that you get, I this might be something that's a little bit difficult to gauge, but do you find that you are going to really have to kind of like bring the excitement back into playing basketball? Do you get the sense that maybe like the program or the culture has kind of been in such a way that maybe like there aren't as many people like interested in it, and you have to like build that up as well, or do you get a sense you'll still have some pretty good numbers coming in?
I think that there's a little bit of down numbers, like with some of the 7th and 8th graders, but there's like a 6th grade class. It's got some pretty good athletes that are going to be coming through. There are some good 7th graders that have came in. I know one kid is going to be a 6th grader that I saw play on the baseball team, and I was like, "That's kid's a 6th grader." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait until he gets up." But I've kind of decided I'm not pulling 6th graders up to 8th grade at least. I know like IESA rules say you could play even 5th grade, you can play up all the way up to 8th grade. But that's, I just want to kind of leave them down there because I don't want to, it's going to be every level, of course, even if it's just 7th to 8th grade, every level ratchets up just a little bit. So I don't want to put a kid in that situation. But, if we ever get like to a tournament or down numbers or something, and I want to get a kid, hey, you just go stand there and box out.
There you go.
That might be a thing. So,
yeah, it's interesting. What I'm getting the sense of is kind of just like the difference in what you were going in Unity, where the way like basketball and then the way it was treated versus kind of like the unique situation you're going to find yourself in this coming year.
I mean, even with that Unity group, there was girls that were 6th graders that were coming to be 7th. There was only 5 of them in that. I mean, they were all pretty good, But I was like, man, why aren't there only so many girls in there? So sometimes in a small school, you can't help it.
Yeah.
And I mean, even like I'm seeing with my kids' high school, I think there's like one senior that's playing basketball this year. And they've got a pretty good program there. So it's just kind of, it's a combination of things. Kids get worn out, kids lose interest, in high school, they get into other things. And you just that's why I want to kind of get my grips into them in junior high and get them excited about it. And hey, I gotta keep my grades up. I gotta be a good student. I gotta be a good classmate, a good teammate. I gotta be a good representative of my community. And then I get rewarded by getting to be a part of this fun sport. So, but yeah, you can never really gauge that sense of like what exactly, put your finger on it. What exactly is it that's driving participation numbers? But now we have to compete with coaches. We have to compete with things like esports.
Yeah, that's different, right?
There's a lot of things and a lot of things to compete with now. So,
have you had the opportunity to work a lot with the high school coaches that they're going to be going to? Is it just one high school that it feeds into?
Yes. I mean, so it's still the same. They have their own separate schools. It's just a athletic co-op.
Okay.
So yeah, I got to work and talk with the varsity head coach and the assistant coach. So, and the assistant coach also coaches junior high girls. So they have a really good girls program there. Carl Beebe has been there for a number of years, and his daughter is one of his assistants, and she was like a 2,000 point scorer, and she played D2 ball at Quincy. So they've got a really good, strong program with the girls. It's just trying to get the guys on board. Yeah, Coach Jones is pretty passionate about it, and I see his frustration with things like I know like he was like wondering where his best player was during some of the open gyms. So, and then I had a kid who came every single open gym, a 6th grader, and his kid is a smile and his enthusiasm, and it's just like, man, I love coaching this kid, I, has a kind of a rough upbringing, and it's a kid that needs to be there.
Right.
So, but then, the high school coach has got all these kids who've got all this athletic talent, and they're just doing other things. It's just not a priority for them, though. So I think that's what we're trying to do is, and talking with him, and when they did the interview, it's like, hey, we want to rebuild this program to where, they're enthused about it, and then they want to be a part of it, and they know that, and they have a sense of like, well, if I want to be a real good, I'm not saying you have to come to everything in order to play, in the off season, but hey, realize that these are the guys that have worked hard and gotten better, because a lot of times during the season, you have all the best intention to do fundamental stuff, and you would really probably, especially in junior high, could probably spend 3/4 of your practice just on fundamental. But if you just don't do enough of the plays and stuff, they're just going to be lost. So they got to do the work in the off season, and letting them know that we're there is a big part of it too. So.
Yeah, and I always found that was kind of the hardest part with the first year, is wanting to jump in and do like off-season work or preseason work. And I always found it was such a struggle sometimes, because the players either didn't know me, or they didn't trust me, or they just kind of weren't feeling it, because, this was kind of a new coach coming in, so they didn't bother. And it was always like tough, because you just want to, like, for me at least, I was just wanted to kind of jump right in right away and get everybody in the gym right away. And always had to, I don't know if it was like curb my expectations or just sort of deal with it that first year until things got going.
I feel part of I think I have limitations. Every coach has their strengths and weaknesses. And, I have some physical limitations and stuff. I was in the military. I've had 8 knee surgeries and a couple ankle surgeries. I put on weight. I'm not the player that I used to be, right? I can't move like I did. So it's kind of hard for me to physically demonstrate everything, right? So I try to. Luckily, I've got a young, agile, limber assistant coach.
There you go.
who's doing a better who's do that. But trying to like gain their trust by showing them I can play. But I mean, I could still go out there a little bit. I threw in the knee brace and got out with them, and I didn't let him know. I didn't let him see me limp to the car.
Oh no!
But I went home and iced my knees down. But I did hit a nice little jump shot. I was trying to explain to him about, how you got to get the sight picture on your shot. And I'm locked in on the rim. And now if I get somebody obstructing me, it doesn't matter. And I looked away from the rim and I hit like a perfect jump shot. And they're like, whoa. And I had to be like, yeah, I totally meant to do that.
Yeah.
I was looking to get a general direction, but it was like, see, I do that all the time.
Yeah. Just don't ask me to do it again, right?
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny.
But you see some coaches out there who, guys who played pro ball, the guys who played college ball, and they're out there. Coach Jones was out there shooting around with the high school guys, and he was just stroking like 35 footers, getting like 3 feet off the air. Of course, he's up in the air running his jump shots.
Sometimes that can even be sometimes more difficult when you still play at like a really high level, and you just know these things instinctually, or can still do all these things instinctually. And it's like, like I'm working, with middle school or junior high players or younger players, like, they physically can't do that. But like, like what you physically can do. And it's almost like, if only I could just transfer this skill or athleticism that I still have over to you.
Well, I've started to kind of, I like to delve into a lot of different subjects and areas of coaching and reading and stuff like that. And thinking about what makes a kid able to do something as what is not. And then there's something I can't remember exactly where I read it or heard it. It's like Newell's theory of constraint. Mm-hmm. So it's like looking at like what a player's constraints are. Physically, do they have like physical limitations? Do they have access to an actual basketball hoop in a court? Do they have a parent that, some kids don't get the time in the gym? So there's all these little things that like, what can you, you're telling a kid, hey, this is what you got to do and you got to work on it. But then you got to think about it. And like, maybe they can't get all of these things because they have these other things in their life or their lack of ability or those kind of things. So it's kind of like focusing more on what you can control with a player, which has made me think more about how I teach things, or like setting goals for players. Like maybe this kid's not going to get his shot perfect by the end of the by end of eighth grade, because there's people who work on it their whole lives. But like, maybe we get our feet right and we keep the ball inside our body, and that's a goal. Keeping it straight up and down. Maybe our hand placement isn't exactly right, so but like at least you're getting the general idea, and just keep pounding in the fundamentals to them and keep drilling things. But trying to be more accepting of the fact that these kids are going to develop different. I mean, my son's been playing, we've been practicing and stuff like that for a number of years, and he's just now getting pretty comfortable with his shot. So, but he still has some ways to go.
Cool. As you mentioned, everyone learns kind of at a different spot. And I like the idea though of like focusing on like just specific tangible things to get better at, so that you can like measure those, know that they got better at those, and then kind of move on. It's probably a lot easier to focus on things that way versus trying to have like more of a big like vague goal that has all these other pieces in it, and maybe just like focus on the actual pieces of what you want them to do so that you can actually see that they accomplished it. Probably makes it a lot more manageable for like you as a coach and for the player as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, footwork is a must, I think.
Yeah.
And that, with every sport, everything, and it's something I've preached since day one is footwork, getting your feet set. Because if you don't have a good base, you're not gonna do anything, whether it's shooting or defense or anything like that. I mean, it goes for all sports. So
how are you feeling, switching gears a little bit, about the transition of coaching boys? Is it anything you expect to be any different, or what's your kind of sense as you're moving on to the boys side?
I expect there to be more egos.
Yeah. That's fair.
Girls and boys have drama, different drama, but that age, that what they're kind of going through, we all kind of know as parents, as you do as an educator and everything like that, and that their bodies are changing, they're dealing with hormones, they're dealing with different social pressures. Boys and girls have different social pressures. So, but kind of remembering what it was like for me then, definitely expecting the egos. That's the big thing. I mean, that's something I've seen with my son's teams and stuff like that. Some of them are becoming not necessarily super nice people in junior high. So trying to work through some of those issues. Obviously, I think too, trying to get them to kind of slow down a little bit, because sometimes if you give me an aggressive athlete, I could teach them techniques, but sometimes boys just want to go 100 miles an hour and they don't know where they're going. They're just like, I'm just going to run really fast and go.
Just let loose. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas a girl will kind of stop and think about things. I've kind of noticed, and I know that's generalization, and I don't, but
Sure.
At least what I've experienced, right, in basketball, from coaching both from pre-K up to now, to eighth grade, is they do generally process things different. So boys are seem to be a little more scared to ask questions because they think it's like a sign of weakness. But girls will ask you a million questions, and I like that. So at least in my experience, anyways. So kind of pulling some of that out of them, and I don't expect them to be so shy. These guys, I'm out there teaching them how to like be vocal on the court, and they don't want to be loud. And I'm like, why?
Until you hear them out in the hallways though, and there'll be a whole different story.
Yeah, something I was trying to do is we were doing like a shell drill, and I was trying to teach them I kind of am teaching them like a pack line style defense. So
sure.
Calling ball, ball, gap, help. So they're calling out their positions and everything. And one kid really wasn't talking or anything like that. And I said, "Hey man, what do you do today? What do you have for lunch?" And was talking with him. And it's like, "Oh, cool. Who's your favorite music artist?" Just asking all these questions. And he was talking to me as he was doing this. I said, "See, we can have a conversation on the court. Then you can yell out ball."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you
You
could-
prove that you can speak. Yeah.
So like just that was something I was like, if you could have a conversation while you're playing basketball, you can, call for help, you can call for screens and everything like this. So trying to work through that, but
Um, kind of moving on to that side of things, what are you looking to try to implement in terms of offense and defense? Are you carrying things over from Unity or shaking things up with this new group?
a little bit of both. So I have decided that what I'm going to do is a basic 5-out read and react, which I'm going to start baseline, pass, cut, fill, and then I've got some, instead of having to call for certain things, you want to teach them how to play instinctually, and that's why I think where it works well. But like rather than having to call for a screen, teaching them like, hey, you back up. The dribbler backs up towards your direction. That's a call for you to come help set the screen. I added like a flex screen in there, so anytime it goes in the corner or they cut across to set a flex screen, because sometimes when you do read and react style, you teach them just cut to the center and then go out. I do a 4-out read and react style where I basically just have a high post, mid post, and short corner. So I've got a really strong post player, and I want to teach him to be kind of a focal point of the offense, not just as far as scoring and rebounding, but like passing the ball. So I've got him like, pass and relocate, pass, cut, fill, relocate. And then I have a 3-out kind of a continuity offense, which is something that we ran at Unity, just kind of against a 2-3 zone. But it's like a continuity. So it's, end up where you start, and it's a simplified thing. It can work against some man defenses depending on what they're doing. But starting out with just those 3 baseline things and then building from there. So there's a couple of plays that I've watched on game film that I said, okay, if I tweak this would work better. So, but I don't want to throw too much at them. I want to try to get them I'm trying to get them to play instinctually. So even though it seems like Coach Jones is going to be there for a while, you never know. And I don't want to send them into the wild, so to say, to learn a whole new system and not know how to play this basketball.
Well, it's kind of the ever-present challenge of coaching at junior high, right? You want to make sure that they're ready to be proficient and be able to function in whatever system they end up running in high school. And you almost like don't want to get them too locked into one particular style of play that they won't be necessarily using when they get to high school.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to emphasize number of transitions. So, when they break out off a rebound, where they need to go, and trying to get them in position. So teaching them, I've got drills that I've been working on. If you're ahead of the defense, you cut to the hoop. If you're behind the defense, I want you to cut and fill out to a position. Teaching them, one thing is definitely teaching them to throw screens in transition, because that's something I try to emphasize more. Is like, you're out ahead. You see your guy come back and set a screen to just pop them free. Which is something that you see as kind of an instinctual thing at higher level play. But just getting him to do that, they're not very good in ball pressure right now. So working on that. But that's kind of like the basic of what I plan on doing. I mean, I've got, fantastical ideas of course, always that, hey, they'll just go out there and they'll run this and they'll run that. And then I have quick hitters and things like that are always going to be situational that I'll teach them. But my goal is, at least through the first few games, is to run them through that way, and then run different starting lineups out there and kind of see how they mesh. And one thing is, I watched like I said, I watched old game film of them, and they had, quite a few younger guys, and they were chucking up 3-pointers with one hand.
Oh, good.
I about
puked
in my mouth. It's like, you got to be.
Boy.
I was like, none of that. Like I've had kids that said shoot a 3, and he shot a 3. He's like, nope, you're not shooting 3s. So I'm like, you've got to do something wrong with your, kids are doing that thing where they get that locomotion, and they're kind of like, back and forth, kind of like I don't know, like a piston or something like that. And I'm like, no, we don't want to do that. So, but I mean, and there's things like, again, that I'm going to add later on that I'm going to build out, but that's kind of how I'm starting. I'm starting from a baseline. I think it's all pretty simple. I've been using an app to diagram plays, and it shows animation. So I've shared that with everybody. I don't know how many of them have looked at it yet, but once, and then of course I haven't gotten everybody in the gym yet, so I don't think everybody's, but I will hand them playbooks day one.
Yeah.
Say, here, go here, enter, give me your email, give your mom or dad's email. Well, here, you can go on the app and do this. And I'm hoping to like film plays and put it on a private YouTube channel. Give them every opportunity to learn, because, you know, kids learn in different ways. So, but just, yeah, I just plan on keeping it really simple. I think I got too much into my head when I was at Unity.
Well, I was gonna ask, what are you trying, I guess, not to take over? What are some things that maybe you're kind of doing away with that you did at Unity that you aren't bringing over? And you sort of alluded to it there about maybe trying to simplify things, or not get as much in your head as you can.
Well, I was trying to follow the suit with everything that the other coach was doing, and he just had better players. And I'm not trying to knock my girls. They picked up things better. They were better athletes, so they could do things. And when they made mistakes, they had a girl who was just, well, two girls that were phenomenally fast and could make up for mistakes and things like that. I mean, I came in there when I got hired at Unity, and they were like, yeah, we do read and react stuff. And I'm like, I love it. So I'm actually hopefully planning in September to go down to a PGC course in Louisville, Kentucky. I think it's like the 7th and 8th of September, and Rick Torbett's going to be there.
Mr. Read and React himself.
Yes. So I just like it because to me, it just simplifies everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can always go to it. Of course, it's kind of hard to do a 5-out with a zone, so you have to have a plan. So, and then I don't think you could just go straight 5-out, because I mean, you tell your defense to drop and stay below and just watch for the cutters. You can kind of cut some, and then help side, you can really cut that off quickly. But so it's just kind of enough variance between the 3 formations. And then as they get comfortable with those, then I will throw in more things. Like then I will add the 4-out and like start from the nail instead, and set high screens and things like that. So, but one thing I noticed is, especially is if you're a youth coach, you teach your kids how to set a screen. They just want to run into each other, you know.
Yeah.
Not a lot of, they either want to set the screen way far away from the ball handler, or they want to come up and just like run over the defender. So there was a lot of offensive fouls with this group last year, but I think that's, you know, growing pains with a young group of kids.
Sure. Yeah, there's kind of like some of it might be like actual technique that they don't know, and then also at a certain, if you're working with, you know, middle school kids, that some things you just have to, I don't know if the word expect is the right word, but you do kind of anticipate them taking place, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I'm just going to kind of hope for the best and plan for the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of planning, now that you've had a couple of years under your belt, as you kind of enter year 3, what, if anything, have you kind of learned in terms of like in-game adjustments, or the way that the speed of the game goes when you're coaching it, that you think are going to be useful to you and entering year 3? Any lessons you learned from that over the past couple of years?
An underrated skill is how to use timeouts and when to use timeouts. When you could see the team needs a break, you know, not just looking at the score. I've found out a successful, like, hey, 2 baskets, and I'm like coming over and say, hey, look, we're already not doing this, and then trying to emphasize those points early, and learning how to. So that was a big thing, because I think before I was kind of like, okay, my first year was that COVID year again. We got like the mass timeout, and we got this timeout, and I was just like, I don't, I always had like a bunch of timeouts left over. So, but learning how to manage that definitely in the second year is a lot better. Um, I think I've learned a little bit more about how to really teach them how to rotate on help side defense better, to try to limit some of the easy baskets and things like that too, and how to like really set them up right, because I think for a while, I had such an image of man-to-man defense and everything like that too. And then knowing when it's not working and when you need to switch to a zone, when you need to switch it up. That's an adjustment too. When you see that something's not working, because that's a lot of things I see is at this level, and even like in JV ball, is like a coach will just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I know sometimes you're limited on what your kids can do, but not only seeing how that goes in a game, but then learning how to practice for that. So that's a big thing too, is how to like do transition drills and things like that. Like I'll do like 5-on-5, and then one team's got the ball and they're coming down, all of a sudden blow the whistle, it's turnover, and then switch, and trying to teach them how to get back, teaching them how to like get down and find your opponent and everything. And also I think being overall calmer, because I was always kind of excitable, and I'm just that kind of dude.
Yeah.
I love the game, and it's like,
Yeah, you're so passionate about it, right?
and you want to, but I see the effect that a yelling coach has on the kids. It just, some of them, they react okay, but most of them in general get tighter and they make more mistakes because they're so worried about, like, oh my God, what I'm doing. So just being a calmer and cooler and a more effective communicator. I started, we all have our little coachisms. So I try to tell them like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So slow the game down, take a deep breath, and then you speed things up. So once you're moving, and then I also tell them, basketball is a simple game. We got to put the ball in the hoop and stop them from putting in theirs, and that's it. Everything else is just a bunch of extra stuff. So at the end of the day, that's what we got to do,
Yeah, I'm with you with the whole like getting excitable part. I think that was something I really kind of struggled with after my first few years, right? Because like you're just so passionate about it, you're so like into it and everything like that. And then like I remember watching myself on film, and I was like, oh man, I'm probably terrifying to somebody. I'm probably absolutely scaring them to death. I would have been scared of me when I was that age. So it's hard though. I'm with you. It's one of those, you really have to kind of rein it in and try and find like the best way to channel it or bring it out at the best time.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've talked about this with you before in the past. I actually have diagnosed anxiety disorder, that I am fortunate enough that the VA takes care of for me. And it's not like crippling or anything of that nature, but it's definitely in high stress situations. It can get the best of me. So also like being cognizant of that and being present in the moment. I've also been trying to like, I don't know, again, off into the ether, but studying like about mindfulness and being in the moment myself, and just realizing this is okay. The other team scored, they're up by 10, but it's not the end of the world. Calm down, right? Don't get anxious. Don't let your chest tightening up. It's okay. Just kind of, and that's a little bit of a struggle. That was my first year, especially. Like I was way too on edge. I was way too. So, and we only had like 12 games that year. So it felt like it was like a football season. So it felt like every single play, every possession was the end of the game. Because we only had that number of games. So
yeah, it's kind of like being like an NFL coach, right? Like every game matters. Your season's so short, relatively speaking.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So do you have goals, like tangible goals that you set for this coming year, or are you trying to keep things a little bit more abstract and not defined? I guess my question is, how are you going to, in your terms, define what success would be like next year, and if you've had a successful season or not?
I think the number one thing is I'm going to say the returning numbers at next season is going to be a big tell, because like I said, they've been struggling with kids staying interested. So
Yeah.
that's going to be, of course, that's a long-term goal for the year. I want to see, I definitely want to see improved free throw percentage. That's a goal, because they shot like, I guess, 17% last year as a team. And that has a lot to do with their main people going in, and the main people going to the foul line, and they weren't great free throw shooters. But I think every coach can talk about a million games that we've lost because of free throws and turnovers. So, so like, I don't have a specific number for turnovers or anything like that. I would like to get some of those. Also, there were some really close losses that they had, and I'd like to make those wins, not for my benefit, but for their benefit. So I have a kind of like a total number of wins that's like floating around in the back of my head, just to show some kind of marked improvement. You always want to quantify things, but I also am going to try to develop a exit survey.
Okay, what's that gonna look like?
Just kind of like, hey, what did you, and I want it to be like anonymous as much as possible. Like, did you learn anything? What did you learn during practices? What did you learn during games? Did the coaches communicate what you were doing right and what you were doing wrong? Did you have fun? Which is very important, of course, because it is a game. And just some other questions obviously I'm going to run this through like the athletic director. So, and then I also want to have the kids set their goals too. Like I said, give me one personal goal and one team goal, and then kind of sit down and be like, all right, we got to come up and what's our realistic team goal this season, and try to like have them work towards that. So
it's super, I don't know if the term is I guess stressful might be the best word for it, but I'm really interested to see how like you go about working on this, kind of like turning around some of those like close losses into wins, because that's gonna be a fun challenge though, because I wonder how much of that might be like a mental thing that you're gonna have to work with, or if there's like I don't know, you watch the game, so I guess you would know if it was like, did they just like make some mental errors? Was it some collapses they had down the stretch, or is it just kind of like a general thing throughout the whole game? I'd be curious your thoughts on that.
Watching what I did with at least with like seventh grade group and everything like that, there was a lot of it that was it was free throws, it was sloppy turnovers, it was not being able to handle pressure defense, and it was a little bit of kind of being out of position, kind of like not really knowing what you're going. I think if I do my job right and I get them better prepared, and I put them, as a coach, the only thing you can do is teach a player the techniques, and put them in the best position for success, whether it's on offense or defense, and then the rest is up to them, really. But they just kind of look lost, like really lost in the sauce. And I'm in for a junior high team. I don't. That's I don't want to be too critical. I just think it's unacceptable.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
if you have like 5 kids that are completely just, they don't know what they're doing. That tells me that you didn't prepare enough. You didn't practice enough. It sounds like, talking with the other coaches and stuff, like there was not a lot of like prepared practices. There wasn't like established, like, we're going to do this, this, and this. I will do form shooting at every practice. I will do ball handling at every practice. I will work on, defensive rotations and box out at every practice. Those are my like big tenets and things. And there's other things in there too that are like, you must do this every practice, because if you don't do it, you won't get better. But it sounds like they weren't really like structured practices. So,
Yeah. So that practice
and
planning looks like a big thing then.
and that shows, because, and I'm not saying that I feel pressured to win.
Mhm.
But I feel pressure to do the most I can for these kids. And that's a good kind of pressure, because when you got pressure to succeed and to give all you can to something, you can get great things out of that. So
Yeah, and it's interesting. That's going to be kind of a interesting thing for you is really, I feel like you're really going to be looking into practice planning and really trying to get the most out of those practices, because I'm not sure compared to Unity, I'll let you speak to it, like how much practice time you're going to even have, or even how long your season's going to be, that if, how big of a time crunch are you going to have to really maximize the most out of those practices?
I am going to have a bit of a challenge because I guess with the co-op and everything like that, the bus comes at a certain time, drops them off from the other school, because like all the boys practice in one school and all the girls practice in another school.
Hmm.
So, you know, high school, of course, I'll have to compete with the high school boys basketball that for some gym time. There's 2 gyms in there. So I'll take whatever I can. Obviously, I'd rather have the bigger gym when I can, just to have for conditioning and things like that. But those I didn't really necessarily have those challenges. Of course, with girls basketball at the start of the season, you're in junior high girls basketball starts in the fall. So for the first month and a half, 2 months, you're it as far as indoor sports, because the boys are playing baseball. So they do fall baseball and junior high. It got a little tight there when the boys started basketball, but we generally like, hey, we were here first. So there's going to be some of those challenges. I mean, I've kind of already have my first 2 weeks of practice laid out. I've got it planned, you know, with some flexibility in the second week, but I really think that I'm not going to introduce them to any kind of tactical stuff until the 4th or 5th day. So I'm basically running a mini camp, and then I can adjust how I see fit. So if I think that things are going well, and then I can throw in a couple things here and there, but I've already told them, like, yeah, I mean, we might go the first day and not touch a ball, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Just because I want them to work on footwork, defense and offense and everything like that. So, I mean, while I say not touch a ball, we will form shoot. I've got to do that. I fully believe in like doing the form shooting. So
Back to basics, right?
yes, absolutely. So I think, you know,
some of the threes you saw.
yeah, it's funny. It's my mom, bless her heart. She's like, Billy, have you ever seen this movie Hooters? It's like, what? The basketball movie Hooters? I was like, you mean Hoosiers, Mom? Yes, I'm a basketball coach. I've seen Hoosiers. You know, I don't think I'm going to quite guess 5 passes, you know, 5 passes every possession, but I definitely want to, like, you know, teach them, hey, this is how you do things the right way. So like I said, it's going to be kind of like a little mini camp. I actually got the opportunity to go to a basketball camp. My son is going to a camp at Monmouth College. It's a D3 school here in Monmouth, Illinois. It's not far away from me. And so the coach is Todd. I don't remember his last name. Todd Scripseth. So he's been there for a number of years. He actually had one of my son's JV coach was one of his assistant coaches. And then another guy is a junior high boys coach or JV coach over at Lewiston. But I got to sit there and I asked him, I said, hey, I'm a junior high coach. You know, I don't want to be trouble. You care if I watch and take notes? He's like, oh no, go ahead, here, bring a chair, sit down in the gym. And I was like, oh wow. So I got to sit there and kind of watch and see the things that he does to teach kids from 5th grade up to 9th grade. And we were talking the same thing. Like, he had different terminology for what he said, but like, as far as like your body positioning and everything like this, and you know, all the fundamental stuff. So that felt really good to know that, hey, I'm doing the basics the right way. So I know that I feel confident that if I build these, you know, get these kids to start with the basic stuff, that it's going to stick and it's going to work. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I was really, that's phenomenal. And, you know, God bless you, college and high school coaches that have time for us little guys. Because it really does make a difference. So,
yeah, no, that's awesome. Before we hit our last couple concluding segment questions, I would be remiss. I have to ask about anything you're taking over from Unity to your new position when it comes to parents or parent interactions in general.
I think I'm going to set the tone in the first meeting, because and number one, I'm going to make sure I'm open. And, it's a small school. There's different towns involved. So I'm going to tell them, I don't care. I don't care what your family name is. I don't care what town you're from. Like your kids' work ethic is what's going to get them playing time. I think I need to be a little bit more stern about what is and isn't discussable. And I know that sounds kind of bad, but like who plays and when they play is, you can obviously bring that up with the athletic director if they want me to come and sit down, but I'm not really gonna talk about that. I think most of the parents are gonna be pretty pleasantly surprised though, because I have a good notion to be really loose with playing time and stuff, especially during the regular season. So hopefully that won't be a major issue, but sometimes you get 14 kids on a bench and they can't all be, there's only 5 at a time. I did have some unique parent interactions when I was there, and we've discussed some of that in the past. Hopefully no one's coming off the bus. Or no one's waiting for me when I get off the bus after the second game. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to be pretty much just be straightforward and more blunt about things. So I did have people like kind of coaching from the stands before, and that irritates me.
Yeah, no more of that, huh?
I'll probably, very tactfully say, hey, can we talk tomorrow? That's another thing. Is a 24-hour rule. If something bad, if we have to say something bad to each other, let's wait 24 hours.
I like the word tactfully.
Yes. Yep. Very respectfully. Well, I've been in the military since I was 9 years old, or 9 years old. I'm sorry, 19 years old. So
made me feel like since you were 9.
Yeah. So either in the military in the service or as a civilian. So I've learned how to very politely and tactfully tell people who outrank me, you can't do that. So it's trying to just kind of transition that over.
Do you expect the interaction within the community and parents would be different from Unity versus where you're at now? Because it sounds like the expectations and even maybe potentially the parent involvement might be a little bit different considering the situations of both programs.
I don't have a really good sense of that yet. So I know like there are some coaches' kids that are on the team. There are some, there's everybody always says, oh, that school, their parents are crazy. I'm like, I've seen my kids' parents, the parents of the kids on my team, like my son's team. I mean, like, yelling at people and swearing. And I'm like, as long as they're not doing that, I'm okay. So I don't really know. But I feel confident in who I am and everything like that. And I feel good about my skills in conflict resolution and interpersonal skills, and I can relate to people. And if they can't, you're not going to please everybody all the time. But I feel if I just handle myself, in a professional manner and be respectful, that I'll be able to stand in front of the judge if it ever comes to that. So, but yeah, I think I definitely learned. Lessons there for sure when I was at Unity. So,
yeah, and it's always nice when you can have that part of it down, and then you can just kind of like focus on the basketball part, because as you said, next thing you know, you're gonna have parents waiting for you when the bus comes out, and you're just like, oh man, I just want to coach basketball and deal with this, and then all the interpersonal stuff. So when you get that skill set down, which sounds like you do, it's just allows you to focus on the thing you like to do.
Yeah, and I think one thing is I'm kind of an over communicator, and I like to give constant feedback. So I like to tell. Like I talked with the parent of the kid that I said earlier had come through all the gyms, and I said he still has a lot of work to do, but he's making progress. Like letting them know that hey, they're doing this, they're doing really well. It's nice, like as a teacher too. Every once in a while, hey, your kid's doing great in class, or I know sometimes you have so many students and things you can't manage that all the time, and you kind of wait for PTA parent teacher conferences, but being open and honest with the feedback and talking with them and letting them know if you want to know how your kid's doing, let me tell you. I won't necessarily have open practices. I still don't think that's a good idea, but I will gladly discuss with the parents what their kids doing in practices and games and where they need to be and and I always have development in mind. So, like I tell them, three basic things I tell these kids is anything worth doing is hard. Um, you're not the player that you're going to be in the future.
Sure.
And only you can determine what you're going to become. So,
Yep.
Right now is your junior high, and that can go either way, because I've seen kids that are studs in junior high and they stop growing and
They are where they are.
they don't get to shoot the ball a bunch, and so they quit. So, but
It's part of the process for sure. To wrap up, there's a couple questions that, as you know, I like to ask every guest. So kind of modify this a little bit to fit the context of this conversation. What is a coaching moment, if you can remember from the past year, that you think those listening would be able to learn from?
So trying to get players to buy into a team as far as team ownership. I've always been one to tell them, like, hey, this is your club. And how to do that is to get them to buy into cheering for each other. I think I got a little too involved with, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but like talking with them about lineups and things like this. How do you think this is going to work? Because I wanted them to be comfortable with it, because I go out and I would change things a little bit. I don't know if that's necessarily something I'll do in the future, because I realized that I was trying to really teach my captains about leadership and about teamwork and team building. And I was also trying some different things. And it upset some people, of course, and then it caused the ruckus. And then they, I really should have just been like, hey, I'm doing this and that's it. Some things you got to explain the whys and the hows, and some things you don't, I think. So I think lineups is probably something in the future. I'm just going to be like, this is what we're doing tonight. And just leave it at that.
That's going to be that, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I was really trying to get them to buy into things, but I think having them lead drills and having them lead like the breakouts and stuff like that. I think that's enough, especially at such a young age. So I had such a high opinion of the young ladies that I coached, though, that I really thought that it would be a little bit different. But in the end, they're just junior high kids, and I'm just not. That's my bad. This is one of those things like, hey, I shouldn't have done that. So I think that was a real teachable moment. So
yeah, part of the learning process. No, that's great. To wrap up, I give every guest that 60-second soapbox. You know the deal. Your platform. If any final thoughts, final message, or however you want to take this. So I'm gonna let you kind of take the floor and kind of wrap us up from there. So go ahead and take it away.
I alluded to earlier, the coach from Monmouth College allowed me to sit there and watch and observe. I'm very gracious for that. So basketball is why we're all here. It's the game that we love. We are stewards of the game. So just making sure that we're open with information and sharing that with everybody. Platforms like your podcast, basketball clinics and camps, sharing our knowledge and our love of the game with other coaches, because there are people out there who genuinely love the game and they think they know the game. And I was that guy. But through sharing things with like coaches that I've worked with, obviously listening to things like, this podcast and getting that opportunity to sit there at a college gym and watch a college coach, work with younger kids and seeing the development is just so important. And even if it's your conference rival, just share the game, because we all want to get better. We all want to make each other better, because in the end, it's about these kids and bringing up the next generations of players and coaches. So just share the game, share the love.
Excellent. Couldn't put it any better myself. Thank you so much, Coach, for joining us to talk about some things the past couple of years, kind of unique new challenge, especially as you move over to the boys side now this next year. So best of luck. Hopefully those first 2 years, I know they served you well, and I'm sure there's a lot for you to learn and a lot for you to gain next year. So good luck next year, and close out some of those games, hopefully, and turn those into wins, and no more ugly one-handed 3-point shots, right?
No, that will be a benchable offense.
Awesome. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck.
All right, thank you.
All righty. Thank you all for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.